Hi, I'm Ishan.
I'm Ed.
And this is Underqualified, where we talk about business casually.
Today we're here with Kristian from Bobby. We kind of cover his story about how he went from taking out a 50 grand debt on a credit card to pay payroll to, over 4,500 stores in Australia and New Zealand.
For a prebiotic soda taking on Coke. Not killing, taking on, taking a little bit of market share. But stay tuned.
So tune in if you're interested in listening about growth of a soda company.
Welcome, Bob. Oh, no, your name's not Bobby.
Welcome, Bobby from Kristian. Yeah.
Everyone calls me Bobby. That's fucking hilarious.
You were the founder, but why'd you call it Bobby? Is that
my grandfather's name?
Oh,
but really, like, it's
nice.
Yeah, it is nice, but it wasn't like we had a normal. I feel like a normal grandparent relationship, but it was like it's a unisex name. I know, girls call Bobby usually with IE, and it just felt right. But it was more about building the personality.
Yeah,
and it's kind of like not to get too deep, but it's like bubbly, Bobby. I don't know. It's something. There's something nice about it.
Yeah. And then there's a competitor with Pepsi owns called Bubbly, or Buble, or whatever they call it.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, which we didn't know about at the time.
And that came to Australia like a few months ago, right?
Yeah, so it came after us, and then I've had some people be like, it's not really my thing, and then they'll send me a photo and it's not our product, which is pretty funny.
No, but they're like, you got Michael Bublé.
You're crushing it.
You're killing it. That's
sure.
Not me.
You're trying to kill Coke. And so, like, this is it's not like this is kind of what Bobby is doing here, and like that's a massive opportunity, right? Like, what's the market cap of Coke? Like, it's
I don't know, probably
hundreds of billions
of dollars.
Yeah.
And I think Bobby has come at the right time because consumers are being more and more informed. Every single day, there you go, producer link.
300 billion.
Almost $300 billion is the market of Coke. And like people are getting more conscious and informed about really how fucking terrible a can of Coke is. If you have 4 a day, this is not good. You should not be drinking this fucking 4 times a day. And you should swap it out for something like a Bobby. And so I think it's like right timing, big market. The growth is exciting. The brand that you're building is there's life. It's fun. There's life in it.
I don't think Coke's going anywhere. Just on that point. Kill's probably a bit strong, but just
take a little.
Yeah, just take a little.
I was
chunk,
dramatic.
Little billion.
Yeah, no, I loved it. No, I did love it, but if they're listening, they'll kill us first. So it's all fun, and they're really good with competition. If they see an opportunity, it's a lot less for them to acquire than it is to start something new. So that's where.
But it's cool. Like there's an incumbent that you're trying. We talked about this in our last episode as well. Of I forgot why we brought it up, but like maybe something about like we're talking about OpenAI and how like. They've been in market for a few years, and now Apple is doing a deal with them, and Microsoft is invested in them. And it's like we're kind of talking about how the giants are bending the knee to the David, and they're the Goliath. And there's so many people, not just in AI, but any different industry. You should never be afraid to take the bold step to try and go against. I'm not going to use the word kill, but like to provide like an alternative and to gain some of that market share. Should never be sort of. Yeah, I think it's a very bold thing to try and do. So, what was like? Maybe you want to reverse back a bit, because starting Bobby, there's probably a lot of questions on how you got here and why you did it. What was maybe like the first sort of inkling towards? All right, you're going to start this like CPG product. Did you start other products beforehand? Yeah, what's kind of like a bit of the background there?
I probably attempted to start a lot of things beforehand. I think I always loved products, and physical stuff you could touch. It was probably my area of interest growing up. But I had when I was young, I was like, wine in a can. Now it's everywhere. Like I sort of felt like I was always thinking of things that have eventually sort of come.
You're like
fruition.
That motherfucker on Shark Tank stole my idea.
Exactly. Was it almost a thing where you didn't necessarily trust yourself? Like you could pick the trend, but you didn't back yourself enough to go to the production line, make it, market it, do all that stuff until Bobby.
100%. And like the interest would be lost at some point along that journey. So you might reach out to a few co-packers or wine growers in that instance, or at some point, really early days when F45 was taking off, I was like, Dad, let's get a franchise. And he's like, And then I think it was probably that really nice touch point of the maturity in myself starting Bobby, when I was 28, 29, and 2 years ago, and then all the other ones I was sort of, still, and I still like to have a lot of fun, but like in that sort of party phase and sort of, chasing girls around and all that sort of fun stuff. And then, to really know that you got to focus on something if you want it to be successful, as you guys can appreciate.
So when you were like, because a lot of our listeners would probably be in that like 16 to 24 range. Like, what are the things you did when you were that age that you feel almost prepared you for Bobby? Like, what are the, in running Bobby, what are those skills? Like, was it Photoshop? Was it fucking sales? Like, what was it that was like your absolute most valuable thing?
For me, it was definitely sales, and every role that I went into was a sales role. And that sort of put me and sales is all relationships.
Yeah.
And sort of that ability to be able to have professional relationships, corporate relationships in some really big businesses, but also some sort of smaller businesses, and sort of get that experience in sort of both areas, I think put me in a really good position to start Bobby. But I think just going down the rabbit hole of millions, or not millions, but several ideas, and getting so excited about it and being like, I'm going to do this or do that, and then you sort of get to that deflated point where you're like, far out.
There's like a speed bump that's just too big for you.
Exactly right. And I had a really good friend once say to me, he's like, you'll know eventually. Like you'll know when the barriers aren't there.
Yeah.
Right.
And with Bobby, keep going down that rabbit hole, and then the barriers just never appear.
They're still not there, yeah.
They're still not there yet. Oh no, we've had a great 2 years, but it's been a lot of roller coaster, and I think that you just got to expect that.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people are like that growing up, where you're practicing that part of your brain that like ideates, and you'll have I think a lot of people have millions of ideas, and they'll go through it. And I think two things I want to ask you. One is, who did you have, like someone that you would bounce that idea off? Like, was it, like you said, your dad, or was it like a friend? And then when you had those ideas, when did you start actually executing on them and like doing things to it? Because I think a lot of people, including myself, growing up, I'll think of an idea, I'll ponder on it for a bit, and then like I just do fuck all. I don't do anything, because like maybe at that time and point in my life, I didn't have the skills, I didn't have connections, I didn't have the resources. What was that for you when you had ideas? Who did you bounce it off? When did you actually start like executing on them?
Yeah, I think like that execution piece. Execution is everything.
Yeah.
I know we've spoken about it before, and there's a lot of businesses out there running that are doing okay, and they've got really good executors behind them. But could those businesses be a lot better? Yes, they could. Yeah. And there's probably people out there with way better ideas on how to run their businesses, but what they can't do is execute and actually follow through a plan. And I probably never realised that as much until the last sort of 24 months or just over. And then to your point before, Dad is sort of someone I always bounce stuff on. But it is interesting because he's 70 this year, so it wasn't necessarily that he understood Bobby, and he was sort of like, but there's Coca-Cola, and it's like, and so like it was more just sort of like a bit of a reassurance, and I think what happened, it was more he probably saw the confidence in me and the way I was speaking about it, which was different to sort of any other idea. So him and my middle sister were sort of two people I always went to. She's a sort of creative director and designer, and now actually just started working for us full time. But sort of was always someone who would listen to me at least.
They'll give you honest feedback as well.
Family.
They're not some bullshitters. Like they're not trying to get money out of you or something. No. Like they are going to be like, that is a fucking terrible idea.
So you knew that Bobby was something different because when you spoke about it, you had like conviction, or like was there something different in your tone about this where you're like, and other people were believing that they're like, okay, I've seen you talk about ideas before. You keep bringing up this one, or you keep talking about this one in some certain way. Was that the case with Bobby then? Was that?
Yeah, I just come off a role with a company called Minor Figures, who make oat milk, and they've done really
cool marketing,
really cool marketing, and that's I won't speak to their figures because they're a private company, but let's just say
they're not minor figures.
Yes, and they're not minor figures. And I sort of came in at a relatively minor base, but we're still talking, millions.
Yeah.
And we were able to get that into over 10 million, sort of in a 2-year period. And I was a really big part of that growth story, and worked really closely with their head of sales, Miranda Jack, and her and I sort of curated this sales team and led that sales team over a 2.5-year period. And that exponential growth is probably what I saw. It wasn't easy. I don't want to say it was easy, but it didn't feel hard. But we had the right branding, the right support, and the right backing with that business, and it allowed me to see what the recipes for success looks like in CPG and especially food and bev.
Yeah.
And that's probably where a lot of the confidence to sort of start Bobby and go, no, these businesses are scalable if you have the right sort of methods to scale it. And that's sort of, I think I hadn't had a experience so close to, something that I wanted to do previously. And I think that was just very fortunate.
So you could almost test yourself, or like that sales part of yourself. Obviously, there's all the unknowns of like, will the Bobby brand work, will the flavors work, etc.
Yeah.
But you could test your sales skills and be like, fuck, I was a pretty heavy reason why they went from 1 to 10 mil, whatever that was.
Absolutely.
And then you can go, okay, this is probably, hey, like whoever wants to invest, like blah, 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 you can like get some people behind you. So that's good.
And it was also a global experience. So we had teams in the UK and the US, and then the resource in terms of their shareholders and their investors. So one in particular, he started a company called RX Bar, and he exited that to Kellogg's for $600 million US. And and I got one-on-one time with a head like that in this sort of space. So very fortunate that I was in that position to be able to leverage the network. Stu, who started Minor Figures, is one of the most amazing brains I've ever met. Crazy, like insane bloke, and you wouldn't mind me saying it, but a beautiful mind around this sort of stuff. And I've definitely learned, off him as well in terms of how important it is to build. It's really hard. And sorry, I'm rambling for a second, but it's really hard. We always talk about in startups, like, you want to create a moat and a bit of that safety space. Super hard to do that in CPG and food and beverage specifically because the barriers to entry are so low. But Stu always talked about, if you can build that brand equity within your product, so the product's almost like a byproduct. The drink, that's how we make all our revenue, but that's almost a byproduct of our brand, Bobby. And that's what we've really are laser focused on.
Yeah, so you look at Liquid Death, which is like kind of everyone's current example of like, the best marketing, but it's just water.
Exactly.
And people can buy water from Mount Franklin. They can buy it, they could buy Gatorade, they could buy tons of hydration drinks, but they're choosing Liquid Death because of the brand. That's like all it really is. It's the same shit as everywhere else. They can put gimmicks in this type of water, blah, 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 but it's water.
And you're selling the stories for that brand, right?
Yeah.
So that's why the sales skills that you're talking about that you had and you're honing in on was so important for, like, it's almost like you are the person to start this type of business because, that's the muscle that's the lifeblood of the business, the story of the brand, right? So, it's good to hear you say that you thought about Bobby after having some experience in a startup that was adjacent to what Bobby was going to be and do. And I think a lot of people kind of miss that step. They think, I want to start a business, and they don't have any experience whatsoever. But you got to see it like unfold in front of your eyes and be a part of someone else's story before starting your own.
Exactly.
I think that's important.
Yeah, super important. But not everyone gets that opportunity. So I'm not naive to that. But what I guess if we're talking about Australian startups in sort of CPG and food and bev, I very fortunate that a lot of people think that we're doing well, which is nice. So I get a lot of people reaching out wanting to meet up, and I try my best because people gave me the time. Not 2 years ago, but they've given me the time for the last 10 years in trying to help and mentor, and I try and give that back as best I can, especially with younger people or younger sort of in their business journey. And the biggest frustration is when they've got almost all boxes ticked, and then they go, but we just don't know how we're going to sell the product, or we don't know how what our distribution plan is. And it's like that's how you're going to get money back. And that should be like the first thing you're figuring out, and then working everything else out around that. And that's probably where we were fortunate, because that was my background in sales. So we sort of stitched that part up first, and then now what does the brand look like, and how are we going to make this really different to what's in market?
Because I guess the brand is the fun bit, right? You love like looking at getting a box back from the graphic designer. You love, touching the can, filling it. But then end of the day, you got to get into the zero, and you got to fucking look at the nuts and bolts P&L and make sure it's actually running as a business. And I guess like I want to ask about how that transition from, obviously you built a set of skills trying and failing, bunch of different random businesses. Then Minor Figures built the sales. What was the transition like from Minor Figures to founder of a business? Like, I'm sure you'd done some of the things like finding co-packers, maybe designing cans, all that kind of stuff. But was it easy, or was it like going from 0 to 100 really, really quickly?
0 to 100, quite scary.
Yeah.
You know, I was on a really good salary at minor figures. And then I went to nothing. I was taking an owner's drawing of $500 a month. And shout out to my dog's mum, who is now my ex-girlfriend and still a really good friend. You know, she supported us during that period financially. And I was just sort of, the $500 just contributed to that in a very, very small way. So without that support, you know, and that lasted for, I didn't pay myself for, 18 months. And the only reason why I started paying myself was we got a decent investor in family office from Melbourne, and they basically said to me in a really nice way, they're very good friends now and very good supporters of the business, but they turned to me early days when we didn't have the relationship that we do now and said, if you die tomorrow, we can't replace you for free. And I was like, that's a really good point. And then they, they probably wanted a salary. They probably wanted a salary that was a little bit higher, and we sort of negotiated to where it is now. And I'm very comfortable, so I'm appreciative of that. But to their point, it makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah. As from an investor's perspective, a bit of my background is I've invested in a bunch of stuff. You never really want the founder to be worrying about rent and electricity and things like that. You want their main objective is to grow the business and build a business. So it makes a lot of sense from like an investor's perspective, like, hey, look, we get it that you're trying to grind and hustle and get this, but yeah, we don't want you to worry about these like ancillary little things that really you should be focused on the bigger picture of, we just gave you money at a certain valuation. We need a markup on that valuation. Go make that happen. Yeah. Don't worry about how you're going to eat tonight. That's
spot on. And they constantly say to me, every time like I catch up, they come into the office maybe every second week, and they're always like, what can we do to take the outside noise away from you?
Yeah. And
they're constantly focusing on that, so I'm able to focus on growing the business. And yeah, it's great to have partners like that.
And did you quit your job at Minor Figures before starting Bobby? Or like, I think a lot of people kind of like think to themselves, or like they're wondering, okay, I've got this idea that I want to do. Do I just kind of do it as like a side hustle while working my full-time job? And do I tell my employer that I'm doing this? Or did you just cold turkey quit? Or like, what was that for you?
Well, I had a really good relationship and still have a really good relationship with one of the co-founders of Minor Figures who heads up the APAC division. And I sort of was just really open and honest. The difficulty that I had was that we were going to use, or the people I was going to approach to sell my product were all the same. So there was a lot of crossover, not in the product, right? He didn't mind in that sense, but in terms of like, would I actually be, continuing to be the best version of myself for Minor Figures and represent it? I couldn't put my hand on my heart at that point and say I was going to be, and loyalty is a huge thing for me. We were meant to launch in market November 21. We got delayed till May 22. I quit in October 21.
Right. Okay.
So we were no revenue for all this time, and I was like, I can't. Like,
Park said it was all planned out. You're like, I'll give my month's notice. Bobby will be in, and I'll be making millions of dollars in 6 months.
Yeah, something like that. And Jono, who is a co-founder of Minor Figures, he was like, I was super transparent with him. I was like, we're doing the R&D. Like, this is where we're at. This is what I want to do with it. So he was there from the whole process. So I think the handover ended up being like nearly 3 months. I was determined to make sure it was the best handover I could, possibly do. And, I'm still, very fond of that business in my office. There's a skateboard they gave me when I left with my initials on it and stuff. And yeah, I look back on those days and in that hyper growth that we were in very fondly.
And then what was like the first things you did when you started Bobby? So you quit your job, and then did you first get investment, or did you, I'm assuming you had some pitch to like get investment and you crafted a story. Was it, some people do the branding first, get the logo. Some people just maybe do the manufacturing first. Like, I'm not sure what, like you two have started CPG stuff. So I don't know what you did first when you were doing Grog. Because I remember you sent me a pitch deck like really early on before you guys had anything. So that was like,
we got money first off the idea, but obviously it was a bit different. Like our one was pretty like, got these YouTubers, got this product that's going to work with their fan base. Like, it's going to work. We got flavors first. That was a big one. And then can designs, box designs, and then we kind of went off from there. What about you?
Flavors were first for us as well. So we got flavors and branding were probably the first piece, and that was self-funded or bootstrapped, called it. And then we'll the manufacturer I was working with at the time was like, okay, cool, no worries, you want to do, and there was 4 flavors you want to do. really small runs of these 4. And I was like, I can't afford that. So I had to go to
the minimums are pretty
minimums,
that was my own money. I'd be like, ooh.
Yeah. And I just didn't have it. Like I'd spend it all on the R&D and building the brand. And I had a lot of people also working essentially for free, just helping me out, trying to get me to know where we are. And but then family and friends sort of went around and be like, hey, this is what I want to do. This is. But the good thing was I was able to say, here, taste this. It was in a glass bottle, wasn't in canned at that point. And that's probably where you see that switch of, hey, this is actually a really good drink. To just telling them about it when they can actually, physically try it, and then you can. So it was like, here's a bottle, and here's our liquid in a bottle, and this is a picture of the can. So it was pretty rogue. And then got a little bit of money, got a storage unit, and had a little desk set up in a storage unit. Got I was just working in the dark, so I'd go like really early days because it was winter. I would go gym, and the gym was across the road from the storage unit. Do a gym class, put on like puffer jacket and trackies over my like sweaty stuff, and then just go like sort of work as hard as I could over in this like cold, dark room in this storage unit. But it was really quick because 7-Eleven came on board, and then once that validated, the product and the idea, and from that we're able to get further funding and sort of get out of that storage unit and into an office with my really good mate, and sort of shared a space with him and continue to share a space with him now.
So you just glossed over like 7-Eleven coming on board. That seems like a big thing to me. What was that So at what stage could you go to a 7-Eleven and go, hey, work with us? Like, did you have this, like the designs or was it just?
Did you have followers on Instagram? Did you have
maybe had like 300 followers on Instagram?
Did you sell that? Yeah.
So probably 200, 300 followers on Instagram. We had, and then the pitch to 7-Eleven was in glass bottles.
And
with canned pictures on pieces of paper. Like nicely as much as you can from Officeworks, right? So the best paper you can buy and stuff, but it wasn't anything too flash. And a pitch deck saying this is what we see, like, this is the opportunity we see, there's a current gap in the market. And then obviously the commercials, which are really important to these retailers, and submitted that. And I genuinely submitted it thinking, there's no chance, like we're so early. And I remember I was driving down Swan Street and the buyer started calling me and my heart sunk, and I'm like, this is the call where they're like, great, love your product. I'm hoping they say,
come back in a year.
Good work. And called and he goes, just want to let you know we're going to take on 4 SKUs and in full distribution. And I just was speechless. I said, I'm going to have to call you back. Hung up and gave him a call back. Hung up, cried in happiness, and gave him a call back about 5 minutes later. Just thanked him so much for the opportunity. Cried a bit more, then called Dad and started doing the ringer.
No, like this guy was really down bad. Like
my girlfriend at the time.
He really needed this.
Friends probably didn't get the call. It was probably more the inner sanctum and that really close family. And probably went home and had 1 too many bottles of wine that night in celebration. But it was a really, really good day that I look back on.
It's funny because it's hard to communicate on a podcast. We've been recording for like 10, 20 minutes, whatever. But that from the idea to that point was probably months and months, right? And like this is the first time that it seems like your idea got validated in a like business commercial sense. Where you're like, oh, this is a real fucking thing now, and that's hard to communicate. Like people don't realize that would have been a massive moment where tell your family, your inner sanctum. You said, that was probably kind of similar. I know you had the YouTube following with Grog, but like going from I know you wanted to start you worked at a bunch of other alcohol companies you've mentioned in episode 1, but like actually seeing Grog become like a real thing and like retailers, it must be like a crazy moment when you guys get those phone calls and they're like, all right, we're gonna order this much, and I can imagine what that's like.
Yeah, and I can assume that was 7-Eleven was one of your major, obviously Coles and Woolies, but you were like, fuck, if we could get into 7-Eleven, like that'd be on your original pitch deck to the family and friends, like. Yeah, one day we'll get 7-Eleven, and you're like, holy fuck, it actually happened. And the whole time I feel like, or at least with me, like I've kind of doubted, or like I didn't want to almost jinx myself. Like it's like, nah, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And then one day the PO comes in from Coles or whatever, and you're like, holy fucking shit, it's actually here, and I can talk about it. Like Same with 7-Eleven. The whole time you would be like, yeah, buyer's calling me to tell me no. Like, yeah, got to have to do another couple months work, et cetera, et cetera. And you actually did it.
and then, yeah, exactly. And just to your point on like the actual timeline. To really map it out and try and make it as clear as possible. So we're talking early 21, let's call it April, is sort of really first ideation. April 21, get the call from 7-Eleven, Feb 22. We don't have product in market until May 22. We don't launch in 7-Eleven until the end of September 22.
Yeah, it's a long ass process. That
you still have to wait 9 months to get on the shelf in 7-Eleven.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And that whole time you're really not meant to talk about it. They're pretty private. Well, they're a private company. They just got sold to 7-Eleven, I think, in some
Japan, maybe? I think I heard
about that. Japan.
Hopefully we get fucking Japanese 7-Elevens here. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I think they do things well, the Japanese.
Good shit, yeah.
I just saw Asahi's brought out a product out of Japan that has a real slice of lemon in it. I'm not sure if you've seen it. So it's a lemon drink with a real slice of lemon in it. So it's got a full, I don't know how to say the word, but like the can lid completely comes off.
Yeah, I've seen like the Colonial do them. Yeah.
And then there's a floating half a lemon in there, which is pretty cool.
Producer Lincoln, you're gonna have to order one of those.
You're gonna have to have some fucking lemon drinks.
That's wild. So when you got the call from 7-Eleven, I think to me that seems like that injected momentum in your business. Where I'm assuming you're like, all right, you just mentioned that you got further funding. Like you took that as momentum and went to potential investors and like said, hey, look, we don't even have a product out yet, and we've convinced 7-Eleven we're going to get into Coles and these other places. Is that what happened after 7-Eleven? What happened after that?
Yeah, they're sort of known as the sort of drinks retailer in non-alc, and so it was a massive validation of the business and the product and the product market fit. And we're probably still a little bit ahead of our time when you look at sort of Olipop and Poppy in the States. We're probably 2-3 years behind them at the very least. Sorry. And yeah, it was just massive. And then it opened up those doors to have those conversations because it was a tangible thing that had happened. It wasn't just a hypothetical, this is what we believe we can do. This has happened, it's happening now, and this is where we believe we can take the brand. And then, from there, we've obviously been able to capitalize on that, but also have some other really good wins and losses as well. You only talk about the wins, but it's definitely a roller coaster. So I love sort of making that really clear to, especially as I touched on those sort of people that come in and they love to chat and see our journey. And I always really make a point that it's not a linear growth trajectory, as Ed knows. Clearly, especially in CBG, ups and downs, and the word cash flow makes you shiver.
Don't even talk to me.
So it is really, really fun. Amazing industry to be a part of. The huge amount of challenges that come with the fun. So you got to have the good with the bad.
So what do you reckon? Like, I'll jump back to kind of you as you quit Minor Figures. If I time traveled back to then and asked you, so where are you in 3 years? Are you ahead or behind of that vision? You know what I mean? Did you think you'd be a billionaire and have sold to 7-Eleven by now? Did you think it'd take longer? Where are you at?
At that time, it was a really good friend of mine, Jimmy, and I were working at Minor Figures together, and he was going off to do his thing. I was going off to do Bobby, and he was the one who just kept saying, no, it's going to do well. It's going to do well. The amount of times from that early April 21 to, call it December, or maybe Jan, maybe even longer in early 22, I had called him specifically because he sort of was there. He first one to taste the product when it was sort of made, and he would just convince me to keep going. And I wanted to quit so many times during that process. It was so difficult, so many roadblocks, and I was just like, I don't think it's going to work. And then I'd wake up and I'm like, no, it's really going to work. And that roller coaster without his support, I probably wouldn't have got to where I am today. I think it's really creepy, but the financials that we sort of stated out, we're not that far off, and we're almost bang on, if not trending a little bit above of what we think we're going to do in the next, in FY25. And it's really cool to see all that, like what is a hypothesis actually come in and be, factual. Because who really knows, right? It is a bit of putting your finger in the air and seeing what sticks. But I guess contrary to that is like, we must have known, or and I say we a lot because there is a team now, but I must have had a really good gut feel that those numbers stacked. But I don't think without my minor figures experience, I would have had a clue what units would be able to achieve.
Yeah,
it's pretty tough. So I again, same Kristian 3 years ago. Did you have any ideas about the challenges you'd face and how kind of potentially dark and how low and high things can get in CPG? Because I don't think it's really talked about enough. But if you mix in cash flow, leaky pallets, fucking ordering cans 6 months before, all that kind of bullshit, it really takes a toll.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't imagine it. I don't think you can be prepared for it, and I don't think that's unique to food and bev. I don't know, but I'm assuming it's not unique to food and bev.
It's a startup thing.
It's a startup thing, but you just can't be prepared for it. The lows are extremely low and isolating, and the highs are almost just a breath of air. So the wins are like you're just getting your head above water, you're gasping air, but you're not really celebrating those wins. And if there's something I could sort of go back over the last few years, just celebrate a little bit more. And now that there's a team, we're just about to hire our eighth employee, but now you have to, because you have to do it for them. But it's still inside. It's just still like, we just did that.
You
just got over that.
You kind of get used to constantly getting your head dunked back under. And when your head's up there, you are kind of like, when's it going to fucking go under again? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I was really fortunate in the sense that I had a reality check sort of as the business was starting to take off. So I was able to put a lot in perspective, with a personal loss of a really good friend. And then I sort of always referred back to that in my head, being like, all right, no matter how bad it is for me right now, this thing, that's what's happened. And I don't know, like if a psychologist would say it's probably not the right thing to do, but for me it worked. And I sort of look back fondly, now, having gone through that grief and going, like, that really helped me through the periods of my business, albeit, personally probably wasn't the best time to go through, but like it allowed me to sit back and go, I'm here, I'm breathing, and everything's gonna be all right, and we're gonna sort of take a few steps back or take a weekend off, and we're going to come back with a fresh mindset and really attack the next week and get through this certain challenge.
Because you can totally Kristian Bobby, like you can become your entire life. Yeah. And it's like, you'll go to family dinner, how's Bobby going? Go to see your mates, how's Bobby going? You're like, can I not fucking talk about this, bro? Like, can I please, like, it's like cash flow is horrible, blah, 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 but I have to tell you like, things are great, da, 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 da. It's like, it's really tough.
I get called, I don't know if we were recording when we were talking about it before, but I genuinely get called Bobby from certain people. Or there's two, my name's Kristian Johannsen, so KJ, and there's another KJ in our group, and he's KJ Jax, which is his last name, and I'm KJ Bobby.
Yeah.
And so, it sort of morphs into your identity, and I try and really, it's hard. You can't separate it, but I try and just be who I was prior.
Because you totally have to, because if it's part of your identity, then you can't go on a date with your girlfriend or this if things are bad with Bobby or Grog. You know what I mean? It's so tough.
Yeah, it is tough. And I think, it's sort of, once you're in it, it's every day and just becomes sort of normal. But when you do have these sort of really good conversations where you reflect, you're like, yeah, it is quite strange.
Yeah.
My name's
you're
been
married
Kristian
to
for
a fucking
30 years,
soda company.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really weird.
But at the same time, because you love it so much, you sort of can put up with it. Well, I personally can.
That's the kind of constant battle thing. Is it's like, do you want to go work at KPMG or consultancy? Fuck no.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Some days you're like, I don't want to be doing this. This is so hard.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And it's very hard when you're the person, and now you said you've got a team now, and they're looking for direction. You're the person that has to set the tone, set the direction, set the vision for everything. So they are really holding you accountable. Like if you don't show up, what the fuck are these 8 people going to do?
When you don't want to be in there.
You have. It's like you have to be there. It's a constant struggle, but also battle in your mind. Like you have to show up, otherwise it's not just you anymore. It's not just you and an idea. You've scaled
investors to please.
Another external pressure, investors.
And I think people look at investment from what I see on LinkedIn and what I hear. I think people look at investment a little bit differently to how they should, if I can. But I think when people give you money to do something and grow a business specifically, that's an obligation, not an accomplishment.
Yes.
And I've stolen that quote off somewhere. I can't remember who. Someone famous who won't watch this, so it won't matter. But so it was like, I think it might have been Mark Cuban, but he's so right. It's an obligation, and when you're in the driver's seat, you feel that tenfold. You want it. Well, if you're a decent human with good morals, what you want to do is make sure that for every $1 they've given you, you're giving 4 or 5 back.
Not like the WeWork guy.
I think we talked about this last episode where in at least in Australia, it feels like to me, and I could be wrong, raising money is like a celebratory thing when it really shouldn't be.
We just raised this amount. It's like
this is the start of the this is the start of the race, start of the business. You should celebrate in the business. And I think it's fine to do a post like we've raised this much, blah, blah, blah. But over the next few months or year that you've raised that money, it shouldn't be your identity or personality. Yeah, you should be growing the fucking business and generating revenue and generating cash flows. Now, different businesses are different. Maybe you're trying to fucking cure cancer to some biotech company. You're expected to lose money for the next 5 years, whatever. But in general, if someone's investing in your business, I would be a bit worried if you're taking that money and you throw a we just raised money party and using investor funds. And I see that a lot in Australia. Maybe it's just some of the people I'm hanging around with. But yeah, on LinkedIn as well. You see that constantly. We've just raised this much. And then that's all you see for the next few months. You're like, oh, hold on. What's going on with the actual business?
You're so right. And we're going through a Series A currently. And I've already wrote my post in my head. It's literally like
me too.
Literally just been like, I can't even remember off the top of my head, but basically what I said is like this is an obligation and this is just the start. You haven't seen anything yet, and basically thank you to the new investors because it's still a risk for them. The executional risk in CPG is huge.
You got to grow.
You got to grow, and that's what for me. It's a massive motivator. To get more people involved and be accountable to more parties. I thrive off that. So, it's definitely not going to be, yes, we'll say, awesome, we've got the cash to be able to do the next, 48 months or whatever. It's 24 months I can do is the runway, but and hopefully set ourselves up for a really successful exit. And then, if that day comes, touch wood, fingers crossed. That will be a massissive celebration. You'll probably lose me for 3 weeks.
So before, I want to ask you about your exit plans and what you think there. But before we get there, maybe just like after 7-Eleven, and then you had to launch the product as an outsider of the businesses that you guys run. It seems like when you do a CPG business, particularly like soda or alcohol, there's 2 things that you need to do. One is getting your fucking drink in the actual stores, the retail locations. And that the whole process of that encapsulates making the actual can and getting it, shipped with, all the boxes to these retailers and signing those distribution deals, blah, blah, blah. That's one whole thing, it seems to me. And then the other one is actually why are people going to buy it? The actual marketing around people walking into the store and knowing I'm coming here to buy Bobby or I'm coming here to buy grog, or if they're walking in and they're discovering your product for the first time, they didn't come in with the intention of buying your cans. They're just kind of looking at the packaging and, you know what, I'm going to try this today. So those 2 things with the actual launch and marketing and getting people to buy your product, and maybe talk a bit about the launch and then how you guys have grown to this date.
Yeah, why are people buying Bobby? How did you get them into 7-Eleven? Because it wouldn't have been a big marketing budget. It had to be a bit agile and
7-Eleven were amazing, to be honest. They really helped us. They allowed us to come in and speak to their staff and tell our story, and they were very nice in terms of sort of working with us around the marketing budget that we did have, the very little that we did have, which was great. But then when you look at a Coles or Woolworths, they've got around 30,000 products in store, and the average shop time is around 10 minutes, right? So you've obviously got people who are shopping longer, but a lot of quick shoppers. So it's that's a lot of products to process,
and they're in there for what they need, right? They're not going, I'm going to go buy a prebiotic soda and have a look at this. It's so it's flour and milk and fucking butter.
So part of the creation around the branding was just simplifying it, and how are we going to do that, and just eye-catching colors, big flavors. People shop a lot on flavors, so it was very data driven. Our brand is small. We had a lot of feedback early days, your brand's small, in terms of on the can. But, no data really that we ever saw was like people shop by brand. Well, especially not in new startups. Obviously, when
if you look at Coke, their whole
heritage.
thing is the brand.
Yeah.
But for you, it's like that's
Well,
not,
they
that's
had
not differentiating.
They had 50 years to build that. It's like when you're starting out.
That brand probably got bigger and bigger as it went on.
Yeah.
They were in the mid 1800s, so around 150 years old. It's crazy how long they've been around. Did use real cocaine in the original mixture and stuff, which is, people think
and then they just put caffeine in it now to keep that buzz going.
And it wasn't. I've done a bit of research. It wasn't specific to Coke. They used like a cocaine leaf in a lot of medicines back then before they sort of banned it, which is really interesting.
Bobby bags, that can be the next
one. Something like that. We'll bring it back and shut down everything. Sorry, I lost track. So we really wanted to stand out on shelf and just be eye-catching and then back that up with a really good flavour. So we focused on making sure that, like, the idea behind Bobby is to try and win the customer that is still consuming full sugar Coke. Not the health conscious customer that's having the no sugar Coke, because there's still so much full sugar, 40 grams in a can Coca-Cola or Schweppes or the like being sold. And it's like, how can we gently hold their hand and bring them into a better for you category without them really knowing the flavor. So we can't have it too different. It can't be this erratic change where they're like, what the hell is this? It needs to be as similar as possible.
It can't be kombucha. It can't be green juice. They're like, because if you're drinking full sugar Coke, you don't give a fuck about your health.
No, exactly right. And we've got some like really good feedback from customers who are diehard, like 3-4 cans of full sugar Coke a day.
You'd be buzzing, wouldn't you?
Oh man, it's like over 100 grams of sugar, and they're just like, this stuff's amazing. I like our cola, and our cola I don't feel like is that. It was really hard to get the cola flavor to where it is.
I tried it yesterday for the first time. It was good. It was great.
But it's not. It's not. I'm happy to admit it's not Coca-Cola, but it's a good cola. A really good cola, but it's just not to get it to that. It was a certain ingredient that's not bad for you. I really like, even me, like, considering Coca-Cola's, someone that I actually look up to them and aspire to them. And I do see a lot of stuff being like, the chemicals and stuff, like a lot of the stuff they use is, all the stuff they use is harmless, and that's why they're still on shelf. But there's a certain artificial ingredient that's not going to kill you that they use, and that this changes sort of the recipe that makes that flavor.
Yeah.
But, we're all natural, so we weren't able to use it. But when we did, we were almost there from a flavor perspective. But I'm kind of glad, because it does sort of have that more like natural, healthier sort of feel to it. When, you see the colouring, which is a little bit lighter, and then you sort of taste it. It's probably a little bit less than Coke.
So was the strategy just like pretty much we're going to try and grab customers while they're on the shop, and that's how we're going to grow Bobby. And the way we're going to do that is kind of like figuring out a way to get people to, like, when people scroll on TikTok and people, when they create eye-catching TikTok, it's like, we're going to stop your scrolling. We're going to scroll stopping TikTok. It's like, you're trying to do that, but in the physical, grocery or on the shelf. You're trying to, when people are walking by, they like notice when they're going for the shop for a can of Coke or whatever, they notice this, a few different colors, and then they look at the branding, and then that catches their attention, but then they zoom in and then they see all natural, low carbs, and then they start being informed there. So that was kind of the strategy behind how you're going to grow this thing. And really the thing is, if you can do that, you just need to get into as many stores as possible, right? That's kind of
exactly. That was definitely our retail approach. So the big flavor was the call out, and so the big flavor and the color was to get them in, to get the customer in, and then we basically broke down the nutrition panel on the back into a really simplistic form that runs down the side of our cans that outlines in a really easy way for the consumer to read how many calories is in this product. Is this product low? Like, what's the percentage of sugar in this product? Does this how many grams of prebiotic fiber does this product have? And it's all natural. And we just outlay that really simple on the can, because another bit of data was like people get confused around nutrition labels, or they don't bother to read them. And that's something we learned. I took a learning from that RX bar founder. They did it really simply on their bar on the front of the pack, like 2 egg whites, a walnut, blah blah blah, and
it's in plain English. Some of these fucking like random chemicals.
Layman terms, like, let's just get it, out there, and that's worked really well. And then from an overarching strategy around how we want to be different and how we want to create a moat around our brand and our business is, but we want Bobby to be we believe that we're building a brand within Bobby We believe that these current products that are in that under the banner are a byproduct of what our brand is.
Yeah.
But we want to get Bobby as a brand so strong to a point in terms of its recognition that we can essentially put our logo on anything and sell it.
Yeah.
And that's the goal, because when you actually look at a lot of businesses in CPG and food and bev, they're just products. They don't build a brand. They don't invest into the brand equity. They're just products, and then it's new product after new product and new product, and it works.
Yeah.
But is it different? No, it's the same as what everyone else is doing. But it's, and I say this out loud because it's not this big secret. It's just people aren't willing to invest the time, energy, effort, and money into building the equity within their brands.
Yeah, and that's the moat that you're talking about, right?
Exactly.
If people are looking at a logo on a product and buying it because of that, that is the moat of your business. That's a very hard thing to do.
And like you look at like the huge beer brands in the US, Jack Daniels, Budweiser. I said Jack Daniels isn't beer, but they've, as old and boring as they are, they have built brands that have lasted, and Coca-Cola, they built brands that have lasted like 100 plus years. Yeah. And people wear Budweiser shirts, Jack Daniels shirts. They want to be affiliated with that brand for some reason.
Yeah.
And they can just put out new Jack Daniels products, new Budweiser products, and people buy them.
Absolutely. And like we did a merch capsule for winter last year, and it was based around mainly sort of Vic in New South Wales, because very snow. So we did ski goggles, we did a snowboard.
Right, that's cool.
And we did this sort of capsule, and I had no idea how it was going to go. I was like, hopefully we'll sell. And the first day, just in merch, we did like 10K. And we were 18 months into our business. And I was like, this is, like we talked about the validation from 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is a validation of the brand.
Yeah.
Because this has nothing to do with our drink.
Yeah, it's hard enough to sell the drink, let alone a t-shirt with the logo of the drink.
So it was like a t-shirt, 2 hoodies. We were selling ski goggles that are branded. They're sick. They're really high quality. Like that's one thing we do as well. It's like 110% or not at all. So if we're going to make a pair of ski goggles, I think we use Oakley's manufacturer. Or they probably don't want to admit that, but like, they're the same. We're just coming out of China. They're like high quality, anti-fog, all that stuff. And like obviously we're paying a decent unit price, but like you just put your margin in there. But we're not an apparel brand either, so we're probably not trying to do the same margins as them as well. So it makes it
it's a
still
marketing
affordable.
expense,
It's a
right?
marketing
Yeah.
expense. But to just get that validation from our customer base, which was a lot smaller then than it is now, it's like that was probably one of the key highlights, I reckon, in the journey to date.
So I guess I want to know what your best day so far is, and that's what you see as like when you felt the happiest and best and most fulfilled by Bobby, and then I want to know the worst and what was kind of leading up to both of them.
Yeah, well, happiest, and just because we spoke about the merch piece, was probably going to the G last year and seeing a guy wearing one of the hoodies at the G. Pretty cool. No idea who he was. That was really cool. I was like, and that's what we always wanted, because I feel like merch can be done in a way where it's just like it is very merch where
it's tacky, right?
Yeah,
like a lot of
it's just like slap logo, not much thought. Where we're like, we want like the oversized tee feel and the baggy hoodie, and like for people to feel like they can go to the MCG and people are going to
because he's picking through his hoodie. He's like, I'm gonna meet my mates. I'm gonna wear something nice tonight.
He's going to pick
the Bobby hoodie.
He's going to beers at the G with his mates wearing a Bobby hoodie. And I was like, that's sick. So that was like a really good day. Day for me. Like when the employees of the company do good things and I see how satisfied they are, they're always just such satisfying moments for me. I love that. Like that's just, it doesn't really matter what I can do. Seeing the love, passion, excitement, and fulfillment that they're getting through the business is just the best feeling. Like nothing, it's like a drug. Like I just want more and more and more of it. It's just like I can't even describe it. And it's just really nice to see. And then the worst day, there's been so many.
There's probably a few
worst days. Probably one of the worst was, being crunched financially, and then having to walk. I remember walking up and down Swan Street. You feel like you can't tell anyone. You obviously can't tell your employees. And I only told Carol, who's our marketing manager, about this story the other day. But
love Carol. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, love Carol. She's a ripper. And having to go into NAB and can I get a credit card? And then they're like, what's your limit? And I'm like, what can you give me? And I somehow got them to give me a $50,000 limit on a credit card. I withdrew it as a cash advance straight away. Started paying 22% interest on it from the day I withdrew it.
22%.
Was this to like cover payroll or something?
Cover payroll and to cover some of our accounts payable. And that was it's hard because I look back on it fondly, but at the time it was devastating.
You're like looking over the edge. You know what I mean?
I feel like that's the biggest thing. If you can't pay payroll, you are, like that is scary. Serious issue, right? So we got through that, and then I was able to sort of, I guess, where my investors have been really, really good is that they let you drown, and just as you'd be able to run out for air, they'll pull you back up.
Yeah.
And I think that's really good because it builds resilience in yourself and the business. It's not just like, oh, here you go. You'll learn nothing.
Yeah.
So they're really good at sort of allowing you to just have to be resourceful. They force you to be resourceful. And that was a moment where I was forced to be resourceful. And then, when they see that you've done, your all and you've really, really exhausted all avenues, they'll come in, but it's at a price as well. Money isn't free.
Yeah.
It's either equity or, it's a short-term loan or, what have you. But it has been really good to have people like that where, you've built that relationship with them where they want to see you navigate through these things because they know that they're building the resilience within the business as well by doing that and not just, giving handouts.
So who's going to buy Bobby?
Hopefully Asahi.
Yeah. Same with Grog.
Yeah. We'll maybe do a double deal.
Yeah. You got the connection.
2 for 1.
But we've, and even Asahi, like a big company like that, I've caught up with a few people in their M&A team just for a chat. They're so generous with their time. And
a little flirting before an exit.
It's always good to be like, we're going to be here in a year, and then you chat in a year and you're there.
Yeah.
And like,
it's good to be like front of mind with people that will potentially acquire you one day, right?
Absolutely. And you want to know what they're looking for, right? And that strategy obviously changes within the M&A team, but like right now and for the foreseeable future, they're big companies. So they're not changing their strategy, every single day like Ed and I can. So, what are you looking for? What are the key metrics? And let's deliver our growth towards those key metrics because you're going to set yourself up for success when you do eventually, knock on the door or they knock on your door. But this really good nugget of advice from an amazing gentleman called Barry Karp, I think he's on the board of Collingwood. He's got a group called River Capital Group. He's building a really, really amazing team. His wife Susie's, beautiful lady. They're the most welcoming people ever. But he said to me maybe about a month ago, he goes, ahead of this raise coming up, he was like, the people you bring on as investors, it's a more important decision than who you choose as your life partner. And you sort of laugh at that and you go, that's pretty crazy. But then when you actually think about it and you hear, some of the horror stories even within, Victoria and Melbourne and, some people that I'd call mates now who I met through just starting the business who have big cap tables and it's always the smallest investor who makes the most noise. But, what they don't realize they're doing, they're stunting the growth.
Yeah.
And you're like, you want a big return, then just go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like legal stuff and back and forth. It's like, this is time that I could be putting into growing this business. But because you're making so much noise, we have to deal with you first. It's such a crush.
So to Barry's point around that, I know he says it lightly, lightheartedly, but it's like, he's not wrong.
Yeah.
Based on sort of the experience I've had to date and the stories I've heard.
And
this is a chapter in your life where it's a pretty long journey, right? You're talking about years and years of your hard work, and they're coming along with you on this journey, and at some point as well, people get greedy when things start going well and right.
Absolutely.
It's always you don't want that investor that gets a bit too greedy and then starts wanting more. And
I think what's really good and probably what's really valuable for people listening who do want to start businesses who will have to go down the lines of investing and taking on partners is a little nugget that I got told very early days is that you always want to leave enough food on the table for the next person. So whether that's the next investor. So what I'm seeing within the space that Ed and I are in CPG and food and bev is ridiculous pre-money valuations driven by companies like Birchall. And that's not, I've got a friend at Birchall, so they'll probably be angry at me for saying that. But anyway.
Because what are they? They're like kind of like...
It's crowdsourced funding.
Yeah.
But it's not to their credit. They're reputable and they're really smart people, but I can't tell you what to value your business at, and you can't tell me. It comes down to the founder and the owner.
If you're good at selling, we've seen this. There's a company called Nectar Hard Seltzer in the US, and they're they're like unique Asian flavors and like product looks cool and whatever. And then they're doing similar style crowdsource funding.
Yeah.
And they're raising at a 40 mil valuation and they've done 5 mil revenue over the last 3 years. And it's like you're valuing them at like almost 30 times revenue on a company that isn't growing as fast as they used to.
Yeah.
And you're effectively getting the public to invest in that. Whereas any venture capitalist would go, get fucked. Like, I'll give you 3 times your revenue last year. You know what I mean?
And that's the divide. So it's like, I see the benefits in it. So if you just want mum and dad investors who are, you know, I think the minimum like size is like $250 in crowdsource funding.
Oh,
yeah.
So you get, you know, massive cap table and like really, you're probably never going to like, no,
that seems like a headache to me.
Yeah,
having
but,
that many people.
well, but it's
Putting
actually,
$250 into buy a fucking box.
seriously. And because they, because it's such small amounts, usually they're probably not caring that much.
They're going
right?
to be vocal.
Yeah.
So then you might be able to sort of run the business the way you want to run it. But if you want to sort of do, I guess, what we want to achieve and sell to a conglomerate, they're really, really smart operators, Asahi and Coca-Cola's of the world. The process of sale is a very stringent one with those sort of companies and that whole due diligence period and what they need to see and the governance around the business needs to be so tight from day one because they will go through every single line item from the day you started the business.
Yeah.
If you don't have the right people around you who are sort of enforcing the governance within the business and that sort of, you know, that corporate governance, especially, you're never going to exit to a company like an Asahi or a Coca-Cola. And I feel like if you just get all this cash very easily from mum and dad investors, you're probably not thinking that's very important. But when you do get, you know, sophisticated investors who have exited businesses before and can teach you this stuff, you know, it's going to put you in a much better position to sort of hopefully follow in their footsteps.
And they can, you know, like your guy, like their mentors, they like, and as a founder, you need as much support as you can. Like you've got to be able to wake up and do whatever you have to do that day and not have to worry about dumb headaches that either an employee or an investor or someone can help sort out for you.
I'm just thinking about like some exec at Asahi or whatever, like looking at your cap tables, like why is there 3,000 people on your cap table? Like, you're right. Like you're going to hand over your data room and like when you sell your company, ideally you're packaged in a beautiful buy button that's super easy to, there's no skeletons in the closet, there's nothing messy, blah, blah, and it's going to be months and months of due diligence. And these people are they're the best at what they do. Like execs at one of these big conglomerates or maybe a private equity company wants to buy a chunk of your business. They are lethal operators.
Sharks.
They're sharks. Like that stuff like that won't get sort of passed through. And so on the point of the valuations, there's like, I see sort of two perspectives on this as if you're a founder of one of these businesses. One is, sure, if you go that route where you let retail invest at a $40 million whatever pre-money valuation, that's your cheapest way to raise money. So like that's the positive, right? Because they're going to give you the money at a 40 mil and a VC won't, you know, VC might go 15 mil. So that's like the positive. But then a pretty big negative is like with your business, where do you ideally see the exit? If the exit potentially is, you know, if the upside cap is 50 mil or 100 mil, you know, and they're already investing at a 40 mil valuation, that's not the type of upside that one of these VCs or private equity or even one of these acquirers will. You're too expensive at that point where the upside's sort of limited there. And so there's a lot of like pressure that you're putting on yourself because now you have the expectations of 3,000 people that, you know, and ideally if they're becoming owners in the business, you say they might not be vocal, but to me, if someone's like a retail investor and they know they're an owner now, I feel like there's like some sort of entitlement to that. Like, you never know.
Absolutely. And you made a great point there. And I don't think people in general are thinking or as laser focused potentially as Ed and I are, just maybe due to our experience and sort of having really good people around us and thinking about that exit strategy. And I think sophisticated investors make you think about that exit strategy. So very fortunate in that sense. But what I speak to a lot of people at a pre-money of 40 and you raise 10, there's 50 as a val. You've got to sell for 100 to double their money, right?
And they don't want double.
They don't want. Who wants double for such a high risk and high execution? So, and to put it in perspective, at 30 times rev, is that like the actual rev? Was that forecasted?
Yeah, it was 30,
so 30 times
30 actual rev over the last 4 years.
There's technology companies that don't get that.
Yeah,
so that's a very high margin.
They've filled 600K of the 2 mil raise.
Right. So, Bev in Australia, and very transparently, we're going out at forecasted 1.5 times.
Yeah.
But Bev transactions in Australia currently today is like 1.2 to 1.8.
How
max.
shit is that? See, the US is
Forecasted rev.
US is 6 to 9, which is juicy. So
Yeah.
that's why we're.
But it makes
we're
sense,
pushing
right?
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bigger
it makes
market.
sense.
Yeah.
More growth. Blah blah blah. But I'm also interested in Billy, the canned water, and hard softy.
Yep.
And what your plan. So if you're planning on exiting the next 2 or so years, are those kind of more just testing the market? Is that potentially Bobby sells and you continue growing these other brands? Like, what's the logic behind those?
Yeah, definitely. So there's Bobby's Drinks Pty Ltd, and that owns Billy. Hard Softy is a business that my mates own. It's a distillery in Clifton Hill. Shout out to Darling Distillery, really good gin and vodka, and they're just ripper blokes. So you've got Benny, who lives up in Noosa. He exited St David's Dairy, which was a local fresh milk company. So dairy farmer by trade. So he's packed the family up and now lives a dream in Noosa. Gets on a hard softy call with a gin bean in his hand on a Monday morning. And then you've got Carlos, who owns the pub in Clifton Hill that's no longer operating as a pub. It's a bottle shop now. And him and Sean run the distillery out of there with another guy, Corey. We were just chatting over a beer. We were mixing the gin and vodka with Bobby.
Yeah,
and
that's pretty good.
And someone was like, "That's pretty good. Imagine canning this." I'd spoken to our investors, and I'd sort of said, would we entertain something like this? And I think we pretty collectively just said, let's stay the non-alc route. Like, this is, we're on a bit of a winner here. Let's not take on too much. Let's not, try and do too much and
Dilute the focus of the business, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's being laser focused is like I contribute to where we are today and that growth. So on the side, we used the recipes to a degree of Bobby. Had to change a bit because we use really expensive, high-grade ingredients in Bobby, probably unnecessary in alcohol. So tweaked them a little bit.
Alcohol just killed the prebiotics as well.
Yeah, so they've got no prebiotics, so hard softy. And then, we went 25% each, the 3 owners of Darling and myself, and that was a private investment outside of Bobby, which makes it difficult because Bobby and Billy now is my heart and soul. Yeah. So I really struggled to give that business any time.
Yeah. Billy, by the way, is canned water. This is like your take in this like liquid death wallaby industry where it's canned water is the show it to the people. This is I find like the canned water industry or like this whole sector so fascinating and how much it's grown and how big it is now. I didn't understand it before, but now at our office at Shuffle,
nice out of a can.
We
order
order.
Nice out of a can.
I don't know. Producer Lincoln, how many of these cans do we order? I do not drink water out of a normal glass anymore. I always grab it out of the fridge. Hundreds a month, right?
Yeah, between the sparkling and the flat, we're spending about $1,000 a month.
It's on canned water. So I can
partly because Dylan from Hits Different is such a good guy as well.
Great
He
guy.
hooks us up. We had 20% off.
There you go.
There you go. It's basically free.
So was that kind of the catalyst to start doing Billy? Did you see Liquid Death and Wallaby and all these other guys and how fast this industry is going? You're like, hey, we could try and, like you said before, if you slap, it's not Bobby, but if you grab your brand, is this like a little test? Will people buy your brand if you just did a different product or was?
So I think no is the answer. Yeah. No, only because how it actually came from was a distributor inquiry saying, would you guys make a canned water under Bobby? Oh, and I sort of walked away going, no chance. Like, we sell ourselves on a full flavored drink. I don't want water to that just seems, how am I going to sell that message? And found a stuff that really doesn't matter. Like, you're just over in your head. And then what actually triggered it was that conversation and then seeing all these rip-offs of Liquid Death. And I did a post on LinkedIn like a few months ago, and I wasn't having a go at people. And I really want anyone to have a go at this industry. It's competitive, it's fun. Try, give it your best shot. I know how hard it is, so have fun. Have fun. I know how hard it is, so there's no, if you can do it and do it well, bloody all kudos to you. And it was frustrating seeing the attempts to people just thinking they could put a skull on a can and think that it would sell like liquid death.
Yeah.
It was almost I found it personally insulting.
I forgot that there's one by a certain company in Australia.
And I don't want to shit can any of them because there is a few.
Yeah.
And then also just going off that vibe. And I genuinely found it insulting. And I was like, it was eating me up a bit. I'm like, these guys don't know how hard it is because you're trying to leverage brand equity off someone else without doing the work.
Yeah.
And then when you sort of start to do and what we spoke of off air is around, Austrian water, which is liquid death, goes into the States, they have poor quality water. It's a great story, great branding, great marketing, and they are doing it better than anyone else. There's no doubt about that. But then it comes to Australia and it's sitting at $6. Like let's be reasonable. The elasticity is there still in CPG, and you've got to be really cautious. It's still water and it's still a can. And then Billy, I sort of came up with, actually on a night out, I had some friends over. And I won't go into too much detail, but I'll paint the picture where I've sort of got these disco lights in my living room that come out every now and then, and they're sort of going at maybe like 3 a.m, and that's where the little guy on the can came up there sort of that night out, and it was a really late night but very fun, and then I sort of pitched it to my investors, the sort of core investors, saying, I think there's a room here. What I'm going to do first, I'm going to speak to all our distributors currently who are selling Bobby and see if they'll take it on. 100% said yes. So every single distributor.
And you're like, well, we've got sales if we make it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
when I sort of showed them, like we went and we did it properly, right? We were able to, get these cans printed and, do it properly. And, Dom from Wallaby Water, he's a good friend. He does the manufacturing for us. His water is insanely good quality. And there's a reason for that, like the way, how meticulous is he around.
It's actually hard to can water. Like,
it is.
It's fucking really hard.
Yeah, he won't let any flavoring go through his lines. Like he's the most anal person around the production process.
Yeah.
But it's why it's such a quality product. So he's our co-packer now. Sort of nice taking that friendship to a business relationship. I see, we both see room for, us to further that partnership over the sort of course of the next little while. But that's sort of where it came from. So we actually got the sales first. We got pre-orders first. So we sort of went to market about probably, sum it up, there's probably 50 grand in pre-orders on water through our distributors. We that's incremental, right?
Yeah.
Revenue. And then when we started having fun with the brand and the little guy, and we're like, that's what we do best at Bobby. We're the best currently, in my personal opinion, in the non-alc at building a brand.
Yeah.
I can't
brand
think
first.
You've got not soda, you've got kombuchas. I don't see anything from any of those guys.
No,
it's all bigger style stuff,
And it's product focused.
It's not fun.
And we're sort of brand focused. And the competition I love because it validates the category. I want more pre-bike soft drinks in the market.
Yeah.
I just want to do better than them, obviously.
Yeah, it's more shelf space for you, isn't it?
So we have had, and it's more people going to the buyers just on that point and presenting it, and then they go, "Oh, we've already got one. Let's just let's invest more. Or let's give the one that's working more shelf space." So we've got Billy in Still and Sparkling, and then we'll bring out 3 flavors of it in January, and we're just going to have fun with it, and we're going to do what we did with Bobby, and we're going to build a really cool brand story. And the old Billy taps is really Australian. We've tried to put it quite big on the front of the cans, like it's Australian water. Be proud of our water. It's great. And it's also a bit of a fuck you to all the people trying to rip off liquid death, and not a personal attack on any of the people behind those brands. But I just am really confident that I think a product it's the right space. It's just there needs to be a bit more creativity.
Yeah,
awesome.
Thank you for coming on today. I think
thanks for coming on.
But is there anything else that you want to leave off with?
No, not really. Yeah. No, great.
Did we cover
great
off?
Coming on. We covered off a lot.
Yeah.
We went so quick. I'm like, I can't believe we're already time's up.
I'd love to bring you back on,
we'll do it in like 6 months or something.
Come back on and
it was fun.
See the update with what's going on. I'm keen to keep following your story. Everyone else listening should be. And then if there's anything,
where do they find Kristian?
Out.
What do you want, LinkedIn or?
Oh, where do they find me?
Yeah.
What's your address? No.
Yeah. 1, 2. No. LinkedIn. Yeah. And if anyone wants to know anything about beverage, please shoot me a message. I do always reply, although it might be a week or 2 later.
If you want to invest in the Series A,
if you want to invest in the Series A, let me know.
Not $250.
Yeah. You need to be high ticket.
A little bit more than that, but please, if there is anyone, reach out. Like I'm an open book. There's really no secrets, and I say to the team, the reason why we're so open with everything we're doing is because by the time people hear about it, they don't realize we've been working on it for 6 months. We're already on to the next thing, so it doesn't really matter. Right. And no, it's cool. I'm enjoying the process. You know, I've loved this chat, so I'd love to come back, 6, 12 months and sort of see where we are.
We can do
and
it.
then if you're in Woolworths, Coles, 7-Eleven.
Everyone listening, go to a 7-Eleven.
Dan
Coles.
Murphy's has hard softy now as well. But yeah, go grab a Bobby instead of a Coke or a Fanta or a Sprite.
No, yeah, cheers. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Wrapped up.